My wife cheated on me with her boss, then stole $250, $0 from our joint account to fund their affair. Now she's claiming my inheritance of $500, $0 is hers in the divorce, and we're heading to court over everything. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get like this, but here I am, sitting in my living room, staring at my phone and trying to process what I just found out. The craziest part. It was all right there in front of me the whole time, and I never saw it coming. My wife had always been a bit of a bitchy perfectionist, but I thought she loved me. Turns out her love was just a cover-up for something else entirely. It all started a few months ago. Had been acting weird, more distracted, more distant. She'd come home late from work, sometimes smelling like perfume I didn't recognize, and she'd get defensive when I asked her about it. I thought maybe she was just stressed with her job. She's a marketing executive, always busy, always on her phone. But then I noticed her phone kept disappearing, or she'd hide it when I entered the room. Small stuff at first, but enough to make me suspicious. One night I decided to check her messages. I used her phone while she was in the shower. I know, sneaky as hell, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I found texts that made my stomach drop. Flirty messages, late-night texts, can't wait to see you, miss you, tonight's the night, and even some explicit sex talk. The guy, her boss, a guy named Mark. She'd been hooking up with him for months, I realized. I read everything in stunned silence, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. What made it worse was the timing. I looked further into the bank statements I'd kept aside, and that's when I saw the real kick in the teeth. Over $250, $0 just vanished from our joint account. I'd been saving for a house, for our future, and suddenly that money was gone. Funds I knew nothing about. The transactions linked to some offshore accounts, some shady transfers to accounts I had no access to. It all pointed to her, and I knew she'd been stealing from us to bankroll her affair with Mark. When I confronted her the next day, she spun this bullshit about how I was overreacting, how it was just money, and that I shouldn't accuse her without proof. She called me paranoid, said I was imagining things, but I had proof. I laid out everything, screenshots, bank statements, the texts she'd sent. Her face turned red with rage, then with tears. She tried to deny everything, of course, but her lies didn't hold up. She told me she was just stressed, that Mark was just a friend, that I was overreacting because I was insecure. I felt like I'd been punched again. How could she lie so easily? How could she betray me like that? I'd trusted her with everything. We had a good life, decent jobs, a nice house, a future I thought we were building together. And now I find out she's been screwing her boss, stealing our money, and trying to gaslight me into believing I was the crazy one. The betrayal cut deep, and I felt this mix of anger, sadness, and utter disbelief. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let it get this far. It's a mess, and I don't even know where to start fixing it or if I even want to. All I know is I'm not going to let her get away with it. Not without a fight. After that confrontation, everything felt like it was spiraling out of control. I was furious, but at the same time I was crushed. I couldn't believe my wife, the woman I loved and trusted, had been lying to me for months, maybe longer. The fact that she'd stolen over $250,000 from our joint account just to finance her affair with Mark made everything worse. How could she be so heartless, so manipulative? I started questioning everything about our life together. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to piece together what I knew and what I didn't. I went through every bank statement, every message, every email she'd sent or received. I couldn't sleep. The more I dug, the more I found. Her phone was full of messages between her and Mark, explicit, flirtatious, desperate. She'd even told him she loved him, that she was tired of pretending that she wanted to be with him. Meanwhile, she was still pretending to be the perfect wife, smiling, cooking dinner, acting like everything was fine. Her excuses kept ringing in my ears. She said she was stressed, she needed something to make her feel alive, that she was just having sex with Mark because she was bored or unhappy. But I knew better. I knew she'd been planning this for months. The money she stole, what was she planning to do with it? How long had she been robbing us? I felt betrayed, angry, and helpless all at once. One night, I decided I needed to see her face to face to get some kind of answers. I called her and told her I needed to talk. She came home, all bitchy and defensive, throwing attitude at me like I was the one who'd done something wrong. She kept insisting she was done with Mark, that it was just a mistake, that she never meant for any of this to happen. She said she loved me, that she was just stressed and confused. That's when I saw the lie in her eyes. I told her I knew about the affair, about the money, everything. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she snapped back that I was crazy, that I was accusing her of things she hadn't done. She claimed she was the victim here, that I was controlling and paranoid. She shouted, called me a jealous idiot, said I was making a mountain out of a molehill, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was too angry, too hurt. I wanted her gone, and I wanted to make her pay. That night I sat alone in the dark, feeling the weight of what she'd done. I thought about the money, how she'd taken it, how she'd lied, how she'd betrayed everything we built. I felt a crushing sense of loss, not just of money, but of trust, of love. I couldn't sleep, and I kept replaying her words, her lies, her sneers. I started thinking about revenge, about how I could make her regret everything she'd done. I wasn't the kind of guy to just let this slide. No, I wanted her to understand what it meant to cross me, so I started planning. I wasn't naive enough to think I could just walk away and forget. I needed to hit her where it hurt. I knew about her inheritance, $500,000 I was set to receive soon, and I decided she wasn't getting a dime of it without a fight. I'd make her pay for every dollar she stole, every lie she told, every tear I shed. I couldn't believe I was even considering revenge, but I was past the point of caring about being the good guy. This was personal now. The plan was simple in my head: get my hands on the evidence, prepare for court, and make her realize she can't cheat her way out of this. I'd expose everything, her affair, her theft, her lies, and I'd fight for what was mine. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my inheritance, my savings, or my dignity. She thought she could manipulate me, lie her way out of this mess, and keep everything. Well, I was about to show her that I wasn't that stupid. I was going to make her regret crossing me, no matter what it took. Over the next few days, I threw myself into gathering every piece of dirt I could find. I wasn't just angry, I was determined. I started digging into her financials more thoroughly, calling in favors from a few contacts I knew in the financial world. I needed to understand exactly how much she had stolen and where it was going. Turns out, she'd been funneling the money into offshore accounts, probably trying to hide it from me. She was clever, but not clever enough to cover her tracks completely. Meanwhile, she kept up her act. She'd come home, act like she was innocent, throw tantrums when I questioned her, and then switch back to being the good wife when she thought I wasn't looking. But I saw through her. Every sneer, every dismissive comment, every time she called me paranoid or controlling, it just confirmed my suspicions. She was trying to manipulate me, to gaslight me into thinking I was the crazy one. But I knew better now. One evening, I found evidence that really set my blood boiling. She had transferred a huge chunk of the stolen money, about $100, $0, to a new offshore account under a fake name. I got access to the account details through a friend who was good with this kind of work. I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of rage and betrayal. That money was supposed to be for our future, and she was just throwing it away on some affair and a lie. I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to stop her from disappearing with everything. I also started making plans to confront her again, but this time with more leverage. I recorded her lying, caught her sneaking around, and saved all the messages from Mark. I wanted her to see I wasn't just some naive husband who got. I was a man who was prepared to fight back hard. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my money or my dignity. I had to make her understand that this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about justice. I knew she'd try to spin her way out of it, so I stayed one step ahead. I contacted a lawyer, someone I knew from work, who specialized in divorce and financial crimes. She was cold and professional, exactly what I needed to make sure I protected what was rightfully mine. We discussed the possibility of freezing her assets, uncovering all her offshore accounts and making sure she couldn't just run away with the money she stole. I was ready for a fight and I was determined to win. The worst part was realizing how much I'd trusted her. I thought we had a good life, that she loved me. But all along she'd been planning her escape, using me as a cover-up for her lies. Every time I looked at her, I saw a different person, one who was capable of lying, cheating, stealing, and manipulating to get what she wanted. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I couldn't recognize anymore. That realization hit me harder than anything else. How do you rebuild trust after something like this? How do you even look at her the same way? But I knew I had to stay calm. I had to be smart. Revenge wasn't just about hurting her. It was about making sure she paid for what she did and that I protected what was mine. I started planning my next move carefully, knowing that once I exposed her lies and recovered the money, everything would change. I wasn't going to let her get away with this, not without a fight. The days that followed felt like walking on a razor's edge. I was constantly on high alert, watching her every move, waiting for her to slip up. I knew she was scheming, trying to cover her tracks, but I was equally determined to stay one step ahead. Every time she left the house, I'd secretly follow her just to see where she was going. She was sneaky, but not sneaky enough. I caught her meeting with Mark a few times, always in some upscale coffee shop or hotel lobby, always trying to hide her face. One afternoon, I decided I'd had enough waiting. I wanted to confront her with everything I had gathered, proof of her affair, the stolen money, the offshore accounts. I knew it would be ugly, but I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I called her at work and told her I needed to talk. She was bitchy on the phone, snapping at me, but I told her I'd come to her office. I wanted her to see that I was serious. When she saw me walk into her office, her face went ill for a second, then twisted into that typical sneer. She tried to deny everything, claiming I was crazy, that I was making it all up. But I had the evidence on my phone, on my laptop, and in my lawyer's files. I laid it all out, screenshots of the texts, bank statements, offshore account details. Her eyes widened in shock, then flashed with anger as she realized I'd been digging deeper. She started to cry, but not like a remorseful wife. No, her tears were fake, her sobs just another act. She told me I was ruining her life, that I was overreacting, that she loved me, just like she had when I confronted her the first time. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I'd had enough of her lies, that I was going to take everything from her, her money, her freedom, her ability to lie and cheat. The confrontation turned into a shouting match. She accused me of being paranoid, jealous, insecure. She said she never loved Mark, that it was just sex, that she was confused. I told her I didn't believe a word she said anymore. I told her I'd be contacting the lawyer and the bank to freeze her assets. I wanted her to see that I was serious about fighting for what's mine. She stormed out of the office, screaming that I was ruining everything, that I was the real problem here. But I didn't care. I had made up my mind. I was going to protect my money, my inheritance, and myself. I knew she'd try to spin this, try to lie her way out of it. But I had the proof, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. That night I sat alone in my house, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and dread. I'd finally taken control, but I also knew I'd unleashed a storm that couldn't be stopped. I thought about the money, about the offshore accounts, the stolen funds, the lies, and I realized that this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, about making her pay for what she'd done. I'd come too far to back down now. This was only the beginning. The next few days were a blur of lawyers, banks, and sleepless nights. I worked tirelessly, making sure every piece of evidence was in order. I contacted my lawyer again, and we drafted a plan to freeze her assets, including the offshore accounts she'd secretly set up. I also filed for an emergency hearing to prevent her from liquidating any more of our money. I knew she was trying to cover her tracks, but I was ready for her moves. I wanted her to see I wasn't backing down, that I was serious about fighting for what's rightfully mine. Meanwhile, was losing her mind. She kept throwing tantrums, calling me paranoid, claiming I was trying to ruin her life. She insisted she loved me, that Mark was just a fling, that she never meant to steal from us, but I knew better now. Her lies were paper thin. She was panicked, desperate, and furious. She kept insisting that the inheritance was hers because I wasn't going to need it, as if she had some right to it after betraying me so badly. Her bitchy attitude only made me angrier. I saw her true face now: manipulative, selfish, and completely untrustworthy. One night I decided I had to confront her directly again. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the stolen money, the offshore accounts. I told her I was going to divorce her, and I was going to make sure she paid for what she'd done. Her reaction was classic. She started crying, claiming she made a terrible mistake, begging me to forgive her. She said she loved me, that she was sorry, that she'd do anything to fix this. But I wasn't falling for her tears anymore. I told her that apologies wouldn't fix what she'd broken. I also warned her that I was going to fight for full custody of any assets and that I was going to pursue legal action for the theft. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't going to let her walk away with a dime of my inheritance or our joint savings. She kept insisting she was the victim, that I was just jealous and controlling. I told her that her lies had cost her everything, and that if she kept up this act, she'd end up with nothing. The most shocking thing was how she turned it around. She started accusing me of being the real cheater, the real thief, claiming I'd been cheating on her all along, that I was hiding money, that I'd been planning to leave her. That was her last desperate attempt to shift the blame. I just looked at her and shook my head. I knew her game now. She was just trying to save herself, but it was too late. The damage was done. That night I stayed up all night going over everything in my head. I'd been betrayed on every level, by the woman I loved, by the woman I thought loved me back. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I'd been holding on to a fantasy of what we had, and now I had to accept the reality. She was gone, not just physically but emotionally. The trust was shattered beyond repair. I knew I had to let go, even if it hurt like hell. I decided I'd fight to the end. I wasn't going to let her take the inheritance, not without a fight. I was going to expose her lies, recover what was stolen, and rebuild my life without her. It was going to be messy, it was going to be painful, but I owed it to myself to do this right. I learned that some betrayals cut so deep that you have to tear everything down and start over. And honestly, that's what I was planning to do: start over, stronger, wiser, and more cautious about who I trust. In the days that followed, everything moved faster than I expected. The legal process kicked into high gear, papers were filed, assets frozen, and I started the long, exhausting fight to get back what was stolen. Protests grew louder, her bitchy attitude turning into desperation. She accused me of everything under the sun, of ruining her life, of being a controlling monster, of cheating on her first. But I'd heard enough of her lies. I knew who she was now: a woman capable of betrayal, manipulation, and theft. No amount of tears or accusations could change that. The court hearings were brutal. She tried to spin her story, claiming she was the victim, that I was unfairly accusing her of crimes she didn't commit. But I had all the evidence: her texts, bank statements, offshore account details, recordings of her lying. My lawyer was relentless, pushing back hard, making sure the judge saw through her bullshit. Eventually, it was clear she was trying to hide her assets, trying to keep her money and her affair under wraps. The judge ordered her to give full disclosure, and I was awarded a significant portion of the inheritance, plus the return of the stolen funds. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to start rebuilding. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Moved out, furious and bitter, still insisting she was the victim, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore, and honestly, I didn't want to. I had lost my trust, but I had gained clarity. I knew I'd be okay without her, better even. I realized that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out who you really are. Looking back, I learned some hard lessons. Trust is fragile, and betrayal cuts deeper than most wounds. Money isn't just paper, it's tied to your security, your future, your peace of mind. When someone you love turns out to be a liar and thief, it's a gut punch that changes everything. But I also learned that you can survive betrayal, that you can fight back, and that sometimes the best revenge is moving on and reclaiming your life. So here's what I Want to say to anyone going through something similar, don't ignore the signs, don't let anyone manipulate you, and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. Trust is earned, and if it's broken, you have every right to take back control. Keep your head clear, gather your evidence, and never let anyone take advantage of your kindness or your love. In the end, I came out stronger, and I hope that anyone else facing betrayal can find their strength too.